Hey, friends, welcome back to Evolving Into Her. I'm your host, Ashley Hope. And if you're brand new here, if the algorithm dropped you off here, baby, you picked the right episode to stumble into. This is the show where we do the identity work, the mindset shifts, the subconscious reprogramming, and we call in the most expansive, juicy, and fulfilling lives. And we have a really good time doing it. So pull up, get comfortable, get cozy, and you're going to love it here. So, first things first, I need a favor. If this show has given you a perspective shift, a mindset shift, if you ever finished the episode and you texted somebody saying, "Oh, sis, you need to hear this," I need you to channel that same energy into an Apple Podcast review. We're doing so great on Spotify. The numbers are numbering, but Apple needs a little help. She needs a little love. All it takes is 2 minutes, and somewhere out there, a woman is searching for exactly what we do here. That's how you found us. That's how a lot of y'all found me, is because other women rated the show, other women reviewed the show. It pushed it out into the algorithm and it landed on your feed. A lot of y'all tell me your podcast popped up randomly on my feed today. I've gotten comments that said, "I'm so grateful that Spotify showed me this episode. This is exactly what I needed to hear." So, in leaving the review, in leaving the rating, you are paying it forward. And your review is how the next woman finds us. And second thing, 75 Her is underway, and I could not be more excited about what is happening in this community. We started officially yesterday. And if you've been on the fence, the cart is still open and there is still time to join us. When you do, you also get access to our private podcast. You can listen directly on Apple or wherever you stream podcasts. And it was created specifically for this experience. You get an episode every week. It's built for the deeper work, and it's all waiting for you via the link in my show notes, or you can go to www.ashleyhope.co. All right, so today we are talking about healing, girl. Specifically, the way a lot of us have really turned healing into this full-time occupation without even realizing it. And we're going to be talking about non-attachment, about letting healing become a byproduct of your life instead of the whole point of your life. And why I've experienced some of the most profound shifts when I was sitting with a coloring book or I was having a really good laugh, a good kiki with my friends. All right. So grab something you can sip slow and let's get into the show. So I don't know how else to start this without just going for it, without just being blunt and straightforward. Says healing is not your identity. Healing is not your purpose. And the moment you make it either one of those things, you have unconsciously built a home in a space that was only ever meant to be a passageway. You were not meant to live in the in between. You were meant to move through it. And there's something I want you to sit with specifically about how you're approaching your healing journey. And I know y'all are probably tired of hearing me say this, especially those who have been in community with me for years. But one of the most powerful things you can practice is non attachment. Release your attachment to outcomes. Release your attachment to expectations. Release your ideas about what healing is supposed to produce, what it's supposed to look like, what it's supposed to yield. Release the version of yourself that you've already decided you're going to become on the other side of this healing journey. Release the timelines. Release the how. Release how it's supposed to feel and how long it's supposed to take, because that grip, that chokehold on the outcome, it can slow down the very process you're trying to move through. You cannot force a flower to open, right? You can't force it to bloom. It blooms in its own time. And you cannot force your own becoming or your healing journey either. Now, a few episodes back, we talked about the power of making a decision, the power of standing on the words, "I decided," and then moving in the direction of that decision. It was episode 62. Go back and listen to that if you haven't listened already. It's also a great re listen. But one of the most powerful decisions I made for myself is that I decided that healing is just a byproduct of life. of me living, of me being present, of me being in alignment. And I stopped treating it as a project with a deadline, and I started letting it be woven into the fabric of how I move through my days. And when I made that mindset shift, I started noticing healing in places I never thought to look for before, that I never really gave myself credit for. I was finding that a conversation would be healing, just a real, honest, connected conversation with someone I love or someone I respect. And I walk away feeling lighter than when I arrived. That is healing. I can be in the middle of a random Tuesday and hear one line from a podcast episode, and something in me just receives it. Something shifts, something opens. That is healing. And some of y'all know exactly what I mean because you've left me comments, you've sent me emails, and you've told me that something I said on this very podcast, something that felt so simple and almost throwaway to me in the moment, it stopped you in your tracks. It stopped you completely. It brought you to tears. It made you reevaluate something you've been carrying for years. It gave you a perspective shift you didn't even know you needed. And you were not sitting in a therapy chair. You were probably driving or folding laundry or doing your skincare routine, and healing found you anyway. So I want you to expand what healing looks like for you. That's the point of this podcast episode, because I think we've been given a very narrow, very heavy picture of what it's supposed to look like. And that picture is keeping some of us stuck in the process, stuck in this loop of healing instead of actually living. So me, I love to color. I love to sit down with a coloring book, R&B playing in the background, a candle lit, just being completely present in that moment. That is healing for me. That is healing my inner child. That is me leaning into my feminine energy. That is me practicing stillness and mindfulness and being fully in my body without an agenda. That healing counts. That healing is real. Another example, I love to calve. I love a good kiki. Okay. So, me cracking up with my friends over absolute nonsense, tears in my eyes, stomach hurting, that is healing. That is my nervous system learning what safety and joy feel like. That is medicine. Me showing up here on this podcast, me sharing my voice, me pouring back into women, using my gift in the way I believe I was created to use it. That is healing for me. Me laying up with my honey and actually allowing him to show up for me, especially as an eldest daughter who is wired to handle everything herself, who is wired to be like, I got it. I don't need any help. I can do it myself. Allowing him to be of service to me, letting myself receive, that is healing. And I want to be super clear about something before we go any further, because I know somebody needs to hear this. You need clarity on this. In no way am I sitting here telling you to skip the hard parts. Okay. There are absolutely seasons in this journey where you're going to have to go there, where you're going to have to dig deep, where you're going to have to sit in therapy and unpack something that has been living in your body for 20 years, where you're going to have to process grief or trauma or a version of yourself you're ready to let go, where the work is going to feel heavy because it is heavy. And that is okay. That is necessary. That is a part of it. But what I want you to take away from this conversation is that heaviness is a season. It's not your entire journey. It's not your entire life. It's not your identity. It is not your purpose. Because somewhere along the way, I think a lot of us received this message, whether it was conscious or not, that the more serious we are about our healing, the harder it has to feel. Like suffering through it is somehow proof that we're committed to it, that we're serious about it. Like if it feels good, if it feels easy, if it feels light, dare I say, if it feels joyful, then maybe we're not really doing the work. And I want to challenge that mindset today. What if your healing was also allowed to feel like freedom? What if it was allowed to feel like play? What if part of coming home to yourself looked like reconnecting with the parts of you that used to dance in the kitchen for no reason, that used to make art because it felt good, that used to just sit back and color, that used to laugh so hard that you forgot what was even wrong? So, friend, invite more play, invite more laughter, invite more childlike wonder into your days. Let yourself be curious again. Let yourself be silly. Let yourself do things that have no productivity attached to them whatsoever and feel zero guilt about it. So, take out your colored pencils, your markers, your coloring book. Take the walk with no destination, sit in the sun and do absolutely nothing and call it sacred because it is. So here's what I want to leave you with this week. Friend, give yourself permission to just be. Allow God to be God in this journey. Yes, there are absolutely parts of your healing journey that require your active participation. You got to meet God halfway. It requires your responsibility, your obedience, your willingness to go into the hard places. I don't want you to ever skip that. There's a time for sitting across from a therapist and going there. There's a time for addressing your trauma, for processing, for addressing the deep wounds, for doing the real inner work. We're not bypassing any of that here. That is not what I'm saying. But I also want you to open up yourself to the possibility of spontaneous healing. I believe in it because I've lived it. A moment where something just shifts immediately. You could have a download, a realization. There could be a line in a conversation or even a song or a podcast that reaches into something in you and just moves it. And you didn't have to manufacture it. You didn't have to force it. You just happen to be present and open and it found you. I've experienced that. It is possible and it is real. So this week, set an intention. And you could say, I am open to receiving healing in unexpected ways. I release my grip on how it has to look. And release the idea that it always has to be arduous and heavy and daunting. Allow some of it to be fun. Allow some of it to look like rest, like laughter, like play, like presence, like simply being a woman who is fully alive in her own life. And then, friend, just watch what starts to happen in your experience. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening to another episode of Evolving Into Her. I will see you next Tuesday. My name is Ashley Hope, and until next time, stay in devotion to your becoming.